eventually it has to get to that, but it will help them if they can get some running game going. Now, Rich Kotite says that they're going to come out with some tricks. I think when you play a team like the 49ers, you can't say we're going to stop them. You have to say we're going to have to do everything we can to upset this team.
And they're prepared to do just that. As far as the 49ers are concerned, you talk about the Eagles not being able to run the ball. Neither can the 49ers.
Yeah, and that's really frustrating to Ricky Watters because he's a great running back. In every game, they rush for less than they did the game before. And I think that will help Steve Young. If they get Steve Wallace back today, their left tackle. And I think if they can get some running game going, that'll take some of the rush off of Steve Young because he is really getting knocked down a lot.
George Seifert, who's done such an incredibly good job as the head coach of the 49ers, sort of a quiet efficiency he operates with.
And some very good players, and he knows what to do with them.
That helps. Doug Bryan's kickoff sails back to Jeff Seidner. And Seidner sails to the 24. And let's have a look at the Philadelphia Eagle offense, led by Randall Cunningham.
Was very
back off a season marred last year by injury. Some doubt as to whether or not he'd ever play again. But he is, and playing very well. In front of him, Broderick Thompson, Holmes, Alexander Davis, and Bernard Williams. They feel this is the best offensive line they've had in a long time. Herschel Walker and James Joseph, the two big backs. Well, Garner is starting. Charlie Garner, number 25. Keep your eyes on him. Flag on the play. First play from scrimmage. Ball carried by Garner, the rookie from Tennessee, who set him on fire in training camp, but has been hurt with bad ribs.
That's what Rich Kotite said. We just want a little life from him. Said he was going to get him in the game early.
76, offense. 10-yard penalty, first down.
Jerry Markbright is the referee. On defense, the 49ers really started to come together last week. Jackson, Stubblefield, Brian Young, and Dennis Brown usually up front, backed by Norton, Plummer, and Lee Woodall, the rookie. And in the secondary, Hanks moves back to cornerback. Daner Hall moves back into the defensive lineup as the safety. Deion Sanders sits with a bad ankle. First and 20. Garner out to about the 24. Tripped up by Tim McDonald.
Randall Cunningham was saying last night, Pat, that Charlie Garner gets in the huddle and he just tells the lineman, he said, all I need is a little crack. Just give me a little crack and I'll get through it. And as a lineman, you like to hear that. You don't like to have some guy say, hey, blow me out some big old holes in there. Because anywhere you can block to just get enough for a little crack for a guy, but it's hard to knock these big guys off the line.
Second down. Cunningham looks things over. Garner again is the lone back. Cunningham fires, pass caught by Fred Barnett, I believe.
Did you see that, Pat?
Calvin Williams, beg your pardon.
Yeah, he signaled. Calvin Williams is out here. Now watch him before the ball was snapped. He signaled something to Cunningham. Cunningham signaled something back to him, and he just threw that quick fade. And sometimes you can throw it out in front. Sometimes you can just throw that a little short, and that's what he did on that one. But they communicated with each other just before that play.
And sometimes it can be just as effective when you throw it underneath, underthrow it. Calvin Williams, the man in motion. That's Garner. Well, that's nothing. Gary Plummer made the first contact.
Gary Plummer played that perfectly. You know what you want to do is that backside linebacker, you never want to come to the other side. As he starts, and he's going to cut back to this side. See Plummer come here? Now he just waits right there. You see, he doesn't come and get even with Garner. He waits there behind so that when he cuts back, boom, he's really ready to fill that cutback hole.
Cuts off the cutback. Second down, about 9. That's Maurice Johnson in motion, and Cunningham back to throw it quickly. Gets it to Mark Bavaro. Bavaro to midfield. And the 49ers will always remember some of the days he had here when he was wearing the New York Giant uniform.
I think in the last 10 years, he's probably been the best tight end in football when you take everything, being able to run patterns, catch the ball, block, toughness, all those things. Mark Bavaro at one time, before he had his knee injuries, was the prototype tight end.
This is not to say he's as good as he was.
No, well, he had those knee things, and he had holes drilled in his bone, and he's had so many things with those knees. He can't be the same that he was.
Double tight end setup. Cunningham didn't like what he saw and called a timeout. So
when you have a bye week, you come up with too many of those things.
Right. We'd like to welcome those of you watching Dallas and Washington to Candlestick Park in San Francisco. This is the opening drive. The Eagles took the opening kickoff, and they're still in possession at midfield. Cunningham again can't get things set like he wants them. And now he goes back to throw it. Goes deep outside, incomplete. Calvin Williams. Oh, he did catch it.
Yeah, that was a heck of a throw.
Yeah.
He threw that one perfectly. I would just watch him. He goes that three-step drop, just throws that ball up there where he's going to put Calvin Williams in a jump ball situation. He throws it over Mervyn Hanks, who has a man-to-man, and between that and the sideline. Watch how perfect this throw is. He has Hanks on the inside, the sideline on the outside, and he has to throw it to Calvin Williams between the two.
Herschel Walker is the lone back. And throws. Pass caught by Calvin Williams again. Many say he's the best kept secret in the NFL.
I think if you look at all the receivers in the NFL, he's probably the most underrated receiver. He's not underrated to Randall Cunningham. Randall Cunningham, you see here, is watching him all the way, and he hits him again perfectly, and that's Calvin Williams' third catch on this drive. So he may be underrated to some people, but he sure isn't to number 12.
First and 10 just outside the 49er 10. James Joseph and Herschel Walker, the setback. Joseph is now the lone beat back. Hit down by Ken Norton before he can get underway. Now Joseph is about the only one of the Eagle backs who's capable of throwing an option pass.
And I think that was the option pass right there. I think that Joseph on that play had an option. Herschel Walker blocked, and then he was deep in the end zone, and then he didn't throw it. Now watch. Here's Joseph. He's going to come. Herschel Walker is going to be down here. See, Herschel Walker comes in motion. The pitch to Joseph. He was looking for him downfield, but the defense was there and he couldn't throw it.
Second and 13. Cunningham to Bavaro. Bavaro lunged right at the goal line. The Eagles say touchdown. The officials haven't said that yet.
So it can't be a touchdown because the three officials that were down there didn't signal touchdown. I don't know what they're talking about. Because no one signaled.
They're all talking. For that conference, they should have sold something.
The pass is ruled complete, down by contact on the 1 yard line. Third down on the 1.
First and goal at the 1.
As a play, you're going to see Mark Bavaro is going to come right down here, right down towards the goalpost. Cunningham is watching him all the way, throws to him. He catches it, said his knee is down there before the ball goes in the end zone. Now, of course, the rule is that when the ball breaks the plane of the end zone, it's a touchdown. But it's where your knee goes down where the ball is at that time.
So that looks like a correct call.
Yeah, that was a good call. His knee went down before, although it didn't give the Eagles a first down.
Those of you who watch Detroit play Tampa Bay, welcome to Candlestick Park in San Francisco. The Eagles' first drive, and they've got it first and goal at the 1. There is no score yet. And And again, the Eagles signal touchdown, but they'll have to unstack and see what the guys in the striped shirts say about it.
Yeah, it was third down, Pat. Remember, the Eagles didn't score a touchdown here, but they still can get a first down here. And you're going to see the quarterback sneak. Randall Cunningham will just take a little delay step, and then he'll go to the right. But again, the ball has to get across the plane, and it didn't. But now they'll measure to see if he got a first down or not.
That was my error. I thought Bavaro got the first down on the catch he made before.
It was just about a chain length short. Now we'll see. Now he has the first down.
Now it's first and goal.
Watch Gary Plummer here on this one. He knows it's a quarterback sneak. He sees it all the way, and he just waits for Cunningham to come to that side and just dips and throws that left shoulder underneath him.
But Cunningham did get the first down. Ball at about the 1-foot line. Garner is the deep back. That's Joseph blocking in front of him. Touchdown, Charlie Garner.
Well, Rich Kotite said if he could get Charlie Garner in there, he'd give him a little light. And I'll tell you what, a big part of this drive was Cunningham. A big part was Calvin Williams. But a little of that big part was that guy right there, Charlie Garner.
The threat and his quickness.
And George Seifert is looking. That's his first NFL touchdown. This is his first NFL game. And
Holder, 75 yards. The Eagles went. And the Philadelphia Eagles take a 7-0 lead. Outstanding drive and performance by that man, number 12, Randall Cunningham.
Now you remember, he started him. And he
That's
said
early enough.
Yeah, he said all he needs is a little crack in there, and that offensive line gave him a few cracks, and they gave Randall Cunningham good pass protection. They went to work right there in that left side. There's the 49er offensive guard, Ralph Pam. He got an all Madden thing. You know the reason he won't be all Madden?
Because he's got that on his ankle brace.
Yeah, well, that's the reason, but he has an arch problem, and they didn't know what it was. So that happens after you are a big part of that drive and you catch 3 ups in that play.
Eddie Murray set to kick off. Dexter Carter deep for the 49ers. Murray's kickoff is going to be short. Fielded about the 11. Carter's got a little alley. Got outside to about the 32. And let's check out the 49er offense. Steve Young, the quarterback. Now in his 10th year. Doesn't seem possible. In front of him, Oates is the center. Deese and Dahlman the guards. Boatswain and Wallace the tackles. Waters, Logan the 2 runners. Rice, John Taylor, and Brent Jones the 3 receivers. None better. Steve Young. Incomplete and intercepted by Eric Allen. And the Eagles will take over at the 49er 29-yard line. Eric Allen got the ricochet. It bounced off Jerry Rice.
Hey, we talk about seeing some great wide receivers in this game and some great quarterbacks, also great defensive backs. The 49ers have their 21. The Eagles have their 21, one of the best in the game.
Downtown San Francisco, as seen by the MetLife Blimp Snoopy 2. Right now, the Eagles in good shape. They lead 7-0 already. It's 1st and 10 at the 49er 29. That's Garner. And he can make some things happen, can't he? His second touchdown of the day. Charlie Garner from 29 yards away.
Well, we talked earlier about a running game. The Eagles had to get a running game going just to help their protection. They've taken that about 2 steps farther than that. They brought in this Charlie Garner and won a little running game. He's given them a whole heck of a lot of running game.
A couple of great moves he put on in the middle of that run.
Like he said, all he needs is a little crack, and they gave him a little crack, and then he knows what to do with the rest of it. Whew, this guy's something.
For the extra point, Murray. And the Eagles lead 14-0 with 8:15 left to play in the first quarter.
Williams, he comes down here. Antone Davis comes here, makes the block here, a cross block. And watch that little crack that they give for Garn, and then he does the rest. Boom, there's one cross. Boom, there's the other cross. Look at that hole there. Now you get a block on Hanks, a missed tackle by Eric Davis, a missed tackle by Tim McDonald, and that's some pretty good running by Charlie Gardner.
That's some pretty good blocking in front of it to spring him, too.
That was a rookie tackle. Bernard Williams who made the first part of it.
Eddie Murray kicks it off down to Dexter Carter. He started with about the 15. It is a stunned crowd at Candlestick. 14-0 Philadelphia. Let's look at the Eagle defense. Greg Townsend, William Perry, Andy Harmon, and William Fuller up front. Thomas, Byron Evans in the middle, and Bill Romanowski, the ex-49er, behind them. And the secondary, Zordich, Jackson, Allen, and McMillan. There's Ricky Waters. Flag on the play. Byron Evans made the stop.
You know, Ricky Waters has really been frustrated, Pat, in these first 4 games. Every game, he gained less yardage.
Offside, number 95, defense, lined up in the neutral zone, 5-yard penalty, first down.
But he's been frustrated, so he wants a whole new start. And he said he saw Michael Jordan talking about it, and he said that's why he shaved his head one time. He said he wanted to start a whole new deal, you know, like start a, deal the cards all over again. So this week, Ricky Waters, in order to get this running game going and himself going, has shaved his head.
A clean slate.
A clean slate.
First down. Fumble. Back to Young. Bounced right back. Mark Logan was the intended ball carrier. Ball bounced right back to Steve Young.
Well, the 49ers are one of those teams that can score a lot of points. They're down 14. Had they lost a fumble there and got down 21, that would have been a real uphill battle.
That'll make it 2nd and 9 as they lost 4 with that fumble recovery. Waters split out wide to the left. Jones in motion. Young to throw it. Hits Brent Jones.
Yeah, this isn't going to be an easy day for the 49er offense now, because for one, they have to fight an uphill battle being down 14-0. And number 2, they're going against Bud Carson, one of the defensive coordinators in this game that is very, very creative. He never gives you the same thing on any play. You never know what he's going to do. He's always going to mix the defenses up.
That's been his history, no matter where he's been. That's John Taylor. Got knocked out of bounds, I believe, a little bit short of the first down by Mark McMillan. There's Bud Carson. Great years, great defenses with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I remember those great years with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bud Carson was one of the first guys that put that defensive tackle in the gap. I was surprised that John Taylor went out of bounds so easily. Patty almost had a first down. Now they come up with 4th and inches. It looked like to me from here that he could have turned it up and maybe got another yard or so.
If he had.
He just took that reverse and ran it out of bounds and left it short.
Klaus Wilmsmeyer back to punt for San Francisco, back deep. Jeff Seidner for the Eagles. Flag on the play. Way downfield, way back with the Eagles safety man is the spot where the flag was thrown for too much time.
But that was really an un-49er-like type play, or an un-John Taylor-like type play that to leave the ball inches short.
5-yard penalty, 4th down.
Yeah, it looks like the Eagles came out here and they're more ready to play right off the bat than the 49ers. The 49ers still look like they're in a pregame warm-up mode, and the Eagles are in a championship football playing mode.
Wilmsmeyer to punt it now. The Eagles are trying to set up a return. Not a very good kick. Get away from it. It's going to be down inside the 10 and about the 7 by the 49ers Lee Woodall. 14-0 with 5:39 left to play in the first quarter. That is if you're a Philadelphia Eagle fan, not if you're a 49er fan. The Eagles have the ball leading 14-0 at their own 8-yard line. Charlie Garner has scored both Eagle touchdowns, and he's the deep back right now. Garner again. Dipping and dancing to about the 13. Stopped by Ken Norton.
We were talking about this play, this 4th down play here, 3rd down play with John Taylor running that reverse. And again, when it's 3rd down, you have to get that 1st down. Now he should have cut it back into McMillan there. He let Mark McMillan knock him out of bounds and come up short where the 49ers had a punt there.
2nd and 5 for the Eagles. This is Garner again. Hit by Woodall. No gain.
Yeah, Woodall's from Westchester College, where the Eagles train, and when the Eagles were in training camp, when Woodall was going to college, he worked as a security guard there. So he knew all those Eagle players, and he used to work with Randall Cunningham and Herschel Walker, and he says they're really good guys, and I don't think they knew who he is, but he makes tackles like that, they're going to find out who he is.
They're going to think he's not such a good guy.
If you look at him, he looks just like Evander Holyfield.
Yes, he does. Third down. Cunningham to throw it. Gets it out to Calvin Williams, and that'll be enough for an Eagle first. Off the back foot and everything else. That's just an indication of how strong Randall's arm is.
Well, and he sat and waited for Calvin Williams. That was excellent protection. And, the Eagles have this thing where they want to throw the ball in 3 seconds, but he didn't have the time. See, there was no one open. He looks and he waits. Good protection. He pumps. He looks again, finds Calvin Williams. But to do that, you have to have good protection, and Cunningham did.
First, Cunningham retreats. Pass to Garner, incomplete. Deion Sanders, by the way, is in the 49er defensive backfield.
Well, he's over here on Fred Barnett, and the Eagles haven't thrown to Barnett yet. The guy that's really been getting him is Calvin Williams. Deion hurt his ankle in practice the other day. Wasn't sure if he was going to play. Didn't start. But, once the game starts and you have that adrenaline, everything starts going, and he's going to play somewhere. If Calvin Williams keeps catching passes, he may end up playing Calvin Williams man-to-man.
Man-to-man, that's right. Flag on the play. Somebody moved before things got started.
Ball start, number 84,
Mark
offense.
Bavaro.
Prior to the snap, 5-yard penalty, 2nd down.
Yeah, you're going to see Mark Bavaro. He's right here as a tight end. And I think what they were going to do is keep him in on pass protection. You see, because he starts back. He starts back in a blocking thing. Well, you can tell he's staying in on pass protection. But he was looking to the inside and thinking of pass protection and forgetting the snap count.
2nd and 15, back at the 17-yard line for the Eagles. They lead 14-0. Randall Cunningham back to throw. Wheels it upfield, complete to Calvin Williams again. Boy, what a day he's having. He and Cunningham both.
Watch this. You're just going to see from this side. Over on this side, Pat, what the 49ers are doing is they're zoning. You see they got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys here in the zone. Now they're going to hit that zone, that open area. Now the reason they're zoning this side is on the other side, away from that, Deion Sanders is playing man-to-man. So they could play man-to-man on one side and then zone the whole other part of the field.
1st and 10, Philadelphia. Handoff is to James Joseph. Straight ahead for a few, stopped by Gary Plummer. With that completion, Randall Cunningham became the second Eagle quarterback to go over 20,000 yards passing. Ron Jaworski is the other.
Randall Cunningham is a rhythm quarterback, and if he gets into a rhythm and he produces in bunches, and he is right in that thing now, 7 out of 8, he is producing in bunches.
He is in tune now. On second down. He fakes to Walker. Throws it deep. Incomplete. James Joseph, the intended receiver. There's a flag down right at the feet of the receiver.
When you leave the ball there, it's probably going to be against the defense. Against the offense, you'd bring the football back.
Right.
Pass interference, number 50, defense.
Number 50 is Gary Plummer.
Out of the foul.
That's a first down.
You're going to see number 50 is Gary Plummer. He's not looking at the ball. You see that left arm? That left arm got in there just a little before the ball gets there. Now, see, if it gets in there right when the ball gets in there, it's a great play. If it gets in there before the ball gets there, it's interference.
But as you said, they left the ball there, so it's first down, Eagles. At the 49-41.
Get outside!
That's Garner. To about the 38. Picked up 3, perhaps. Deion Sanders tripped him up.
You know, Garner broke a rib, Pat, and they had to get special shoulder pads for him, and they just got him in this week. And what it is it's a rib that's high. It's the first rib, and it's way up in the back or shoulder area.
Not that he got hit. It's like, as you pointed out last night, like what happens to you when you sneeze hard.
Yeah, when you hear people that they sneezed and broke a rib or something, he was running a pass pattern and just breaking the pattern broke a rib.
Here's Cunningham. Incomplete. Intended for Maurice Johnson, one of the 2 tight ends. Plummer was the man who hurried him.
And he was hit by Dana Stubblefield. I mean, this is a big part of this 49er defense now, are these 2 defensive tackles. See Stubblefield there? He gets down, he's crawling,
Whoa.
He's right on his thing, and he hit Cunningham's knees just as he was throwing the ball. Well, you cannot allow that penetration up the middle. That was a great effort by Stubblefield. I mean, he hit that gap and he started to crawl.
And then he hit Cunningham, as you said, right on the knees. That's when you're very susceptible to getting a knee injured. Here comes the blitz after Cunningham, and he's caught from behind by Merton Hanks, the blitzing safety man.
That's the play that you need. If he's going to scramble, you have to have someone who's as faster than he is. Like you said, Merton Hanks is going to be coming on the blitz, number 36. Now, he's the one guy that when Cunningham starts to go, he can chase him and catch him. And also, you see him try and get the strip there? He tried to knock that ball out of there. That's a good thing about having defensive backs blitz, is they can catch a scramble.
Especially with these 2 quarterbacks, Young and Cunningham. Mitch Berger back at midfield to punt. He'll try to keep things under control. He has a very, very strong leg.
I think of all the defensive players for the 49ers, and the 5 more yards to work with.
Dexter Carter standing back at about the 10. He'll try to hang this one high. The pooch. Pretty effective.
And those 5 yards were perfect. Had they not taken that penalty, that ball would have been in the end zone.
That's the end of the first quarter. 49ers nothing. In San Francisco, at Summerall with John Madden, 14-0, the Philadelphia Eagles lead. And the first quarter statistics really tell you a story of the Philadelphia dominance.
Look at that, total yards, Eagles 153, 49ers 4.
And they start from deep in their own territory. Ricky Waters corralled. Maybe he got a yard. William Thomas and Greg Townsend there.
See the Fridge come in there, big number 90. He wanted some action there at the end of the play.
He had some action somewhere.
Yeah. William Thomas, number 51, made the play, you know, because he has a lot of speed, and Ricky Waters couldn't jump to the outside. And then after the play was over, here comes big old Perry lumbering down there to give Waters some ending to that play.
He controls the middle of that defense. You don't run in there against him. Young, incomplete. Eric Allen on John Taylor.
Yeah, we talked here, Pat, if you look in the first game, the 49ers rushed for 156 yards, and then 110, then 105, and then 74. So each game they've gone down, and right now, being down like this, they probably aren't going to rely on the run a lot now.
3rd and 9. Singleton was the man in motion. Young in the end zone, safety, as he is hurled to the ground by the Eagle rush, led by William Perry. And the whole defensive front of the Eagles buried Steve Young.
I think the thing is, you're going to see the pressure come right here from William Fuller. You see, he starts up the field, and then he just takes his guy Boatswain and just knocks him right back into Steve Young.
Tough rush. 16-0. The Eagles lead the 49ers. Opening seconds of quarter number 2. 2 points, and they'll free kick from the 20-yard line. So the Eagles will get the ball back, and they should have it back in pretty good shape. Wilmsmeyer. Short kick. Jeff Seidner. Hit at about the Eagle 44, where they'll take over. The safety again.
We were talking about Bud Carson and what he does different. Watch, here's Andy Harmon. He's a defensive lineman. He drops out in zones, and then here's William Fuller. He's the guy that's going to get the rush. But watch how Harmon comes out, and he's going to be right in the area. Number 91, dropping out from a tackle, is going to be right in the area where Steve Young wants to throw. You see here? Then he can't see it. He has to hold the ball, and by that time, William Fuller has beaten the Harry Boatswain.
First down, Eagles. And the handoff is to Garner, who breaks into the 49ers secondary to the 40, and he does hit the hole in a hurry.
You know, the Eagles haven't really had like a slashing, quick running back in a long time. In fact, they say that maybe since Wilbert Montgomery, and they say that Garner reminds them of Wilbert Montgomery. But watch how quickly he gets to the hole. Then he has good vision. I mean, he's kicking, he's moving, great balance, and then he's always making a move on someone as he slashes through the hole. This guy can play.
First down at the 49er 40. He'll get another carry, and again he's got good yardage. Down to the 33 and a flag on the play. Merton Hanks had to come up to make the stop.
You know what they're doing? The Eagles are just beating the 49ers to the punch. They're beating them to the punch on defense, beating them to the punch on offense.
Number 36, defense.
That's against Merton Hanks.
Yeah, if you just watch, you see the motion here, and watch how quickly they get off on the line. You see the offensive line, boom, they're beating the 49ers. They're just getting a man on a man, and then he can just run at him or just cut back. He has all kinds of lanes in there.
On the play, there is no foul. The hand was just on the mask, no grasp. Second down.
Well, you heard Jerry Markbright's call. Good block by Alexander.
Give me that. They said the hand was just on the mask. It wasn't a face mask. I think it was there by Merton Hanks and then taken off. I think the officials were nice on that one. That's a new rule. If it's just there, it's okay.
Oh, I thought you meant they had to be nice.
No, I don't know where that one came from.
2nd and 2. And it's Garner again, and he'll have enough. Right now for a McDonald's game break, let's return to James Brown in our Hollywood studio.
Well, Pat, the Patriots and Packers game went down to the final 4 seconds when Matt Barr booted a 33-yard field goal that's good. New England wins its 3rd straight 17-16 over Green Bay. Let's go back to San Francisco, Pat and John.
And a very impressive performance by the Philadelphia Eagles. That's Byron Evans adding support from the sideline. But this offensive unit has had control of the game so far. Cunningham's fake. Incomplete. Fred Barnett was the intended receiver. Deion Sanders back there with him.
Yeah, that's one thing Cunningham said, is he said, if Deion's in there, we're going to go after him. You're going to see it right there. There's Fred Barnett. He's going man-to-man, or Deion Sanders is going man-to-man on Fred Barnett. Deion Sanders, even though he has a bad ankle, he has such great catch-up speed that he almost ran right by the ball after Barnett got by him. Although it looked like Fred Barnett could have caught that ball.
It had been out in front. Here's Cunningham again. Incomplete. Intended for Mark Bavaro. Third down.
This offensive line of the Eagles is really doing everything. Bernard Williams, their left tackle, I've really been impressed with him. Number 74 down there. You just watch him. I mean, he's a big guy, 6'8", 320 pounds. Has good balance, good feet. He was the #1 draft choice of the Eagles this year, but he is really playing well in this first part of the game.
Third down and 10. Cunningham to throw it. Rolls out of the pocket. End zone. Touchdown, Victor Bailey. The back of the end zone. Bailey came down with it.
That's where Cunningham can kill you. You know, he gets back there, and then he scrambles. And when he scrambles, he's always looking for the deep one. And you're going to see it. He's going to come back here, and then he's going to go to the outside. And now, when he scrambles, his guys are going to go deep. You see him scramble. Bailey was running and out. Then he sees the scramble, and he just goes up, and Cunningham just throws it right over Eric Davis's head.
That's one of the things about playing with Cunningham and the Eagle receivers. Most receivers, when a quarterback starts to scramble, they're taught to come back to the quarterback. They want to take off.
With the Eagles, when he scrambles, they're thinking touchdown.
Eddie Murray's extra point is good. And the Eagles, boy, do they look impressive. 23-0.
You know, we've been together up and down the line. It just keeps getting better, time after time. You're a part of me. That's the heart of me. Dr. Pepper, you're a part of me.
6 months ago, Joanne Spears broke her leg playing soccer far from home. Fortunately, the Spears Blue Cross and Blue Shield plan provides easy access to medical care nationwide. Blue Cross and Blue Shield, local plans with healthcare options as diverse as their communities. And how was Joanne's recovery? If you can catch her, ask her. Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Live long, live well.
Only one defined agility like Edwin Moses. Only one embodied control like Evelyn Ashford. Only one personified endurance like Frank Shorter. Only one runs like this. Seville STS with the North Star system. The great performers are always creating a higher standard.
Fox NFL Sunday is brought to you by Cadillac and your Cadillac dealer, creating a higher standard. By Wendy's, after 25 years, quality is still our recipe. And by Heineken, just being the best is enough.
Out at Candlestick Park, as the Eagles have taken control of the game so far, 23-0 they lead in the second quarter. Eddie Murray set to kick off. Nate Singleton to about the 34, where he's down by good coverage. Mark Woodard back to the touchdown.
You want to see an interesting thing, Ben? Here's Bernard Williams. Here's Troy Wilson. Wilson takes it inside. Bernard Williams tackles him. That's what Cunningham sees, and that makes Cunningham scramble. The officials didn't see it. Watch him right there. See the tackle? And that's what Cunningham saw. He saw that pressure coming. He scrambled out, and then he looked up and saw Bailey going deep.
First and 10, 49ers at their own 33. Young back to throw. Screen pass coming to Logan. Drop.
Well, the fans are starting to boo now, Pat, because, again, to me, they just look like they're off balance. If you look at their first 3 possessions, first play they had 1 play, and that was intercepted, 3 plays and punt, 3 plays and a safety. So they had bad starts. Then after a bad start, things got worse for them each time. And then the Eagles have taken advantage of each opportunity.
William Floyd now is the lone back. Jones in motion, Young to throw it. To Brent Jones. Pickup of about 6. Byron Evans and Bill Romanowski.
The 49ers look like they're not in sync, but they look like they never did get in sync, like they're sleepwalking, like the game hasn't started yet. And again, a big part of that goes to what the Eagles have been doing against them. I mean, you know, the Eagle offense has been phenomenal.
3rd and 3. The 49ers haven't made a first down yet. Now they have a first down. Jerry Rice will get it. Close to midfield. The struggle goes on. Greg Jackson made the stop. Romanowski involved in a little shoving match with his former teammates.
And of course, that's one thing that the Eagles talked about on defense. Just like everyone, when you play the 49ers, Jerry Rice is going to catch passes. John Taylor is going to catch passes, but you have to tackle them immediately. And that's what they're doing there. There's Romanowski coming in at the end for a little more action.
Ricky Waters swings into Eagle territory to about their 46. Stopped by Byron Evans.
Greg Townsend was talking about Bill Romanowski last night, and he said he's never seen a guy so wired up. He said he's so wired up he can light up this whole city. So, you know, of course, he played with the 49ers. They wanted him to take a cut. They didn't want to take a cut, so he was traded in draft day. And anytime you come back and play your old teammates, that will tend to wire you up.
On second down. That's Waters. Inside the Eagle 35. Another first. Evans and Thomas made the stop.
And they run right here at Romanowski, and you're going to see him take on the block. Romanowski will come, boom, he'll take on Deese there. And again, Ricky Waters is right in behind Derek Deese as he blocks Romanowski. He just runs right off that block. Good timing.
Waters in the slot to the right this time. William Floyd, the lone back. And Young's back to throw it. Incomplete. Intended for Brent Jones.
Hey, it's nice for the 49ers to have Steve Wallace back, because he's going to take care of that left side, and Steve Young likes to throw to the left side. And when you have Wallace blocking the way he does, he just takes his guy and just keeps him right on the line of scrimmage. And that gives lanes for Steve Young to throw to the left side.
And for a left-hander, that makes it that much easier. 2nd and 10. Waters behind the line of scrimmage by Byron Evans. He was ready to play last night when we talked to him also.
Yeah, he says you have talkers in the league, and he says he's a talker, but he's also a backer-upper. And here's a guy, this is how you play when you're a talker and a backer-upper of what you talk. He just reads that, he sees that guard pull. When the guard pulls, he just takes that area that the pulling guard vacated. You see him come right in there. He just fires in there, and then he makes a heck of a tackle once he gets in there. That was a good read and a good tackle.
3rd and 17 for Steve Young. Rice to the ground, and he was down a little bit short of the first down. He lost the ball when he lunged in an attempt to get the first.
Interesting, they're going to give him the spot where he went down, like you say, and not call it a fumble. 49ers are going to have a 4th down.
They got to go.
Yeah, John Taylor caused 1 4th down for him. Jerry Rice almost cost another. Right there, you see, or did cost another. I don't know that he was going for it. I don't know that wasn't a fumble.
I don't either. I don't think he ever had it to begin with.
Yeah, I thought he caught it and was stretching out. He never did have control of it.
Here's Young. Out to Rice. This time they make sure. First down at about the 16-yard line of Philadelphia.
Again, they know, and the Eagles know, that if Steve Rice is going to roll, whether it's a rollout or a bootleg, it's going to be to his left. And that's what they're trying to defend. They're trying to defend the middle for scrambles and the left for rolls. Of course, they didn't defend that one because he just rolled out there and boom, just popped Rice out there.
Taylor goes left, Rice is right this time. Steve Young into Waters. Waters inside the 15, about the 14, a pickup of 2, stopped by William Fuller.
That was a big pickup for the Eagles in this offseason. William Fuller, getting him from the Philadelphia Eagles. They got Townsend on one side from the Raiders, Fuller on the other side from the Eagles. Andy Harmon inside, one of their most consistent guys. I think William Perry, the fridge. Now, when you talk about big, that is big.
Steve Young to Brett Jones, William Floyd, and Floyd. Is he mad about something?
No, he's just fired up. I mean, when you get down like this, when it scores 23-0, I think everyone's saying, look, we got to make something happen. We have to get going here. These guys are whipping us, so they run that bootleg we're just talking about. He bootlegs to the left, and I think that he could be mad because he felt he got hit in the face mask, but he was happy that he held on to the ball.
3rd and 2. Close to a first down.
I think if I were the 49ers and I wanted to run, I think maybe I'd try that left side a little more because they're having trouble on that right side getting Fuller blocked.
This one, I think, is close enough to measure.
And then if they look at that left side, maybe they don't want to run right at the refrigerator.
Well, they know they got to go around if they run in that direction.
Yeah, you can't run at him, nor can you cut back into him. Whew, about as short as you can get.
Yeah. Just a couple of links.
That's quarterback sneak short. I think that's the only play that you can run. I mean, when you just have that much, I think all the quarterback has to do is take the ball and not fall backwards.
5:40 left to play in the first half. Young starts Rice in motion. To Floyd. Floyd has the first down at about the 4.
If you look at the drive here, they started this one on the 34-yard line, 12 plays, 62 yards. Now they starting to look like the 49ers. I mean, they're starting to get into sync now.
They were on their heels and knocked backward by the Eagles early. Floyd again barrels to about the half-yard line. Floyd goes 240 at least.
Yeah, when you got a big fullback like Floyd, you know, he's a true fullback, and they just want to take him and just power that thing straight ahead in there, get in behind your guard and tackle. Good takeoff. Fuller gets up the field, and they just run right inside of him.
Second down And about a half yard away, Waters and Floyd behind Young. Young. Touchdown, San Francisco.
Well, they didn't run that quarterback sneak on 4th down. They saved it for the goal line. I think they're going to go for 2, Pat.
Well, this certainly would be an opportune time to go for it.
You know, that's one of the things. Down by 23, they have a card on this. And so that must be part of the formula. That if you're down by 23, you go for 2.
And you get that safety back that the Eagles got. Well, they picked up the additional 2 points. Young. Rice is in the backfield. And here's Steve Young. Touchdown, I beg your pardon. 2 points. Brent Jones from Young. The 49ers have 8.
It's my business to help keep people safe.
At the 49ers, they used all their personnel. Here's Brent Jones right here, the tight end. Jerry Rice is in the backfield. They got them all over on the left here. Here's Brent Jones down on the right, and he's just going to run a crossing pattern. If you watch, Steve Young looks out to the left, finds a lane, and hits Brent Jones for the 2 points.
So the score with that 2 points is 23-8.
That's the thing about the 49ers. I mean, they do so many things on offense from so many different formations. They really use their personnel from every different angle that they can be used.
So Brian to kick off in the direction of Jeff Seidner. Line drive kick. Fielded on the hop by Seidner. He is to the 35, where the Eagles would take over 1st and 10 from that point, leading 23-8. Be over, but the new Fox comedy Hardball is just warming up. See why the Pioneers are the most outrageous team ever to hit the major leagues. Catch a new old episode of Hardball tonight, right after The Simpsons. Pretty good way to enjoy the day.
Yeah, they're right outside the stadium, and they got these boats. Look, they all tie up together just outside the stadium, and then they all watch the game together. They all look like they're on 2 boats.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. That's what the boats look like from the blimp. I always wondered.
Very close friends.
What a boat looked like from a blimp.
Hard to say. Here's Cunningham. Ducks under 1. Gets it out to Calvin Williams. Stopped by Eric Davis.
Yeah, this has really been a Calvin Williams, Charlie Garner game. Herschel Walker has not touched the ball yet today, and Fred Barnett has not caught a pass yet today. So it's really been Randall Cunningham, Calvin Williams, of course, the 1 touchdown to Victor Bailey, and a big part of Charlie Garner.
Charlie Garner and Herschel Walker are the 2 backs behind Cunningham. Williams, the man in motion. Garner with room. 1st down. Moore as he gets into 49er territory to the 45. Stopped by Ken Norton. Oh, he is something.
Well, you know what he does? He finds holes. He's going to start here, then he finds a hole and a lane back here, and he takes it back. This is what it looks like here. They're just going to go, man, see, it's a draw. He starts here. Herschel starts that way. Then Herschel gives him a lead. Just gets Ken Norton just enough that Charlie Garner can get by him. That was kind of an organized thing where Herschel started to the left and then brought his lead back to the right.
1st down, Eagles. Garner again. Darts into the secondary to the 45. To the 40, make it. Which 49ers quarterback holds the team's single season ran? Gonna surprise you. 2nd down and 4. Fake is to Walker. The pitch is out to Garner. Down the sideline is Garner and out of bounds at about the 12-yard line of San Francisco. Merton Hanks knocked him out of bounds, but this guy has put on some show.
Well, watch what they're going to do is they're going to fake the ball to Herschel and then swing Garner around and pull their big tackle, Bernard Williams, out here. Let's see, they go in motion, fake to Herschel right there, swing the ball out here to Garner, and watch, he's behind number 74 going down. Boy, that guy can run. Merton Hanks plays that well, though. That could have been a touchdown.
As it is, it's a first down for the Eagles at the San Francisco 12. The Eagles on the move again, leading 23-8. And that's your trivia answer. Steve DeBerg in 1979. First and 10 Eagles. Here's Cunningham. Whips it over the head of Mark Bavaro, incomplete.
You know, this first half, Pat, Calvin Williams and Charlie Garner have 208 yards of this Eagle offense. The rest of the team has 54, but they're trying to mix in a Mark Bavaro here. Herschel Walker hasn't.
Cunningham responsible for most of it. And
Calvin Williams
and
having
Calvin
a big
Williams.
day.
Right. Here's Randall back to throw it. That's caught by Calvin Williams. About a yard and a half shy of a first down.
I would think if Deion Sanders were healthy, I would think that I would get him on Calvin Williams. It looks like he started out on Calvin Williams. You see what happened? Then they put Calvin Williams in motion, and no one came with him. I bet you that was Deion Sanders' man, because he started man-to-man, then he went in motion, he started going with him and stopped halfway, and that's why Calvin Williams was wide open.
3rd and 1. Garner, the deep back. Cunningham is going to run it himself. Very close to a first down. Just depends on the mark.
I think that was that old college option, wasn't it? It looked like either that or Garner went the wrong way. It looked like he was trying to pitch it to him. I'm not sure if he missed a handoff or if this really is an option. See, he fakes to Herschel Walker and then comes down there and he faked that pitch. That was an option.
Yep.
And they took away the option. They took away Garner, so that forced Cunningham on the option to be the runner.
And he made a very wise choice. First down, 1st and goal.
Here it is this way. Watch. There's the fake to Herschel Walker. Come down the line on the option. He really wanted to pitch it when he couldn't pitch it. He said, I'll run it, but I really don't want to down this close to the goal line.
That's a very delayed option.
Yeah, and you know there's a couple linebackers. I mean, there's Gary Plummer staring right at you.
1st and goal at the 2. Touchdown, Eagles. Herschel Walker.
Yeah, they're just beating them. This Eagle offense has really started off. They just started off beating this defense to the punch, and they've continued to do it the whole first half. Yeah, this is an impressive offensive game. I mean, you know, we're talking about Cunningham being impressive and Calvin Williams and Garner, and this is some display. And this offensive line is really blocking well on both the run and the pass.
It's a matter of who can you leave out. Almost no one, because they've all contributed. Eddie Murray's extra point is good. And the Eagles lead 30-8. Surprising turn of events at Candlestick Park, as the Eagles have just been in total control and lead it 30-8. This is the second quarter. That's Dexter Carter at the goal line. Cut down at about the 17 by Rich Miano.
Yeah, and the one thing about it, Pat, is they come out here and they've whipped them every way. I mean, offense, defense, and special teams in this first half.
The MetLife Blimp Snoopy 2 is teamed up with Fox Sports to provide you with a bird's eye view of Candlestick Park and the surrounding area. MetLife Blimp is equipped with a state-of-the-art camera that provides a unique perspective of the action some 1,200 feet below. The action has been mostly Philadelphia so far. Young to throw it. Outside to Logan. Good defensive play. Eric Allen up to make the stop.
There's a guy who was one of the top players in the NFL is Eric Allen. He's always, great cover guy, good tackler. 49ers are going here with no huddle.
2nd and 9. Young to right. That'll be enough for the first down. And now they're signaling timeout.
Yeah, this is a 2-minute drill here, but I wouldn't be surprised being down 30-8, Pat, if in the second half we see a lot of no huddle by the 49ers.
They both have 2 timeouts remaining here in the first half. Coming up on the Dockers halftime, James and Terry will have all the scores and highlights from around the league on this.
And I think that it really has helped the Eagles, and I think that the 49ers look like they were on a bye this week so far.
First down, San Francisco. Young back to throw it. Gonna take off with it. Down he goes. Says hurry up, no timeout called. Bert Grossman made the stop, and now they will take a time.
He's hard to beat.
4 wide receivers for the 49ers. Young has time, swings it out to Ricky Waters, and Waters steps out of bounds at the 49. Still 25 seconds remaining in the first half. The Eagles leading 30-8.
I think with 25 seconds here, I think the 49ers still have 1 timeout, and they still want to get, the first thing you want to do is get in field goal position. Then once you get in that position, then you go for your score, and they have time to do that.
25 seconds and 1 timeout. Young has the ball batted in the air. It's intercepted by the Eagles' Andy Harmon. That's the second deflection of a Young pass that's been intercepted today.
And old Andy Harmon couldn't wait for that ball to come down.
Down soon enough.
He got up, but he wasn't going to jump up to get it. One of the things, the coaching point is always catch the ball at its highest point. And you watch this, Andy Harmon doesn't do that. He's working. William Fuller hits the ball up in the air. Now watch Andy Harmon. He just waits and waits. He takes a little jump there at the end.
Yep.
That's a defensive tackle jump. I tell you, William Fuller has had a big half too. We talk about the offensive guys, but Fuller has had a big half here for their defense.
It was he who tackled Young for the safety. It was Fuller who put the heat on in. Here's Cunningham. Flag on the play. Down he goes. Another flag. 2 different penalties. Clock down to 12 seconds remaining in the first half. 30-8. Holding against the Eagles. Holding twice against the Eagles.
Offense. 10-yard penalty. First down.
Call against Antone Davis.
Antone Davis has played well here this first half. Bernard Williams, a lot of Charlie Gardner's yardage has been off that left side. Long arms, great balance, can run.
6'8". Very ready. Of course, they had a 5.5-hour flight out here. Eagles, of course, have a new owner, Jeffrey Lurie. And he was in here before the game began. He was all fired up.
Yeah, he was so fired up, he was on the field before the game carrying a football around in his arm.
They'll just decide to run things out. And so a surprising score as the 49ers and Eagles head for the locker room. It is 30-8.
I think we've done Philadelphia Eagle games, Pat, for years, and I think this first half is as impressive a first half as I've ever seen them.
They have totally dominated what was supposed to be the most well-oiled offensive machine in football, the 49ers. But the Eagles look like they are well-oiled today. That's the end of the first half with the score, Philadelphia 30, San Francisco 8.
Feminists have declared
171 passing, a total of 273 to 102 for San Francisco. 2 intercepted passes.
And look at that, the 49ers only have 26 rushing yards. That was the big thing that they wanted to improve upon. They talked about all week. Ricky Waters wanted to, get his game going. And the Eagles' defense, we're talking about the offense and the job they did on offense, but their defense did equally as well.
And when you get behind, as they have, it's pretty hard to establish anything running. Short kick by Eddie Murray again, fielded all the way up at the 18 by Dexter Carter, who's knocked out of bounds at about the 36 by James Joseph. 30-8. The Eagles lead it.
We knew that this was going to be a quarterback game. And you look, Randall Cunningham is 11 for 16, 171 yards and a touchdown. Steve Young only 9 of 14 for 80 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions.
Both of them were deflected. To Waters. Ricky Waters outside the 40, about the 41. It picked up about 5. William Perry made the stop.
Hey, William Perry doesn't make a lot of stops over on that side of the line of scrimmage. William Perry usually makes it to his side, and if you run at him or you cut back into him, but that time he pursued down the line, and he made it on the other side of the line. Watch him. The ball is going to be run to the right. There's William Perry taking on a double team, coming right down the line there and making the play.
Waters again trying for the first down, stopped by Byron Evans this time. Pretty close to first down yardage by Ricky Waters.
I'm sure that they went in and had one of those talks, because they know that in the first half they were just beaten to the punch. I think at halftime they said, look, we have to go and establish, let's run the ball, let's get up, let's knock someone off the line of scrimmage, let's wear that defense down a little, let's do some of those things that we wanted to do in the beginning and didn't do.
About 1.5 yards short of that first down. And here's Young to throw it. Just does get rid of it, incomplete. The heat was on. Steve Young had no chance to find anyone.
And they're trying to throw those short passes, and the Eagles are just jumping on them. You see Rice come in there in the short pass, and again, it's not only the heat that's on them, but those guys are right in the lane.
That's Greg Townsend that time, right in his face.
And watch, you see Rice trying to come underneath, and watch Eric Allen. Eric Allen wasn't coming up there to knock that ball down. He was coming up there to intercept that ball.
Wilmsmeyer will have to punt. Got a little wind at his back. That's about the only change since the game started. A punt off the side of Wilmsmeyer's foot, but a flag on the play.
What the heck was that?
I don't know. He almost missed the ball.
That looks like something you used to do out in your backyard when you were first learning to punt. Maybe, first of all, he dropped that thing too low, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he dropped it, and his foot didn't hit it till it darn near hit the ground.
Maybe his cleats got caught in the grass or something.
Yeah, or he forgot to bring his leg up. He put the ball down and forgot to bring his leg up.
A face mask violation. Jerry Markbright again, the referee.
That'll be a first down. Let's watch this punt again here. Yeah, he just dropped it too low, or forgot to bring his foot up, or maybe, like you say, maybe his foot did get caught.
The cleats are too long, or his foot was too low, one of the two.
Or the ball was dropped too soon. He dodged a bullet there, because if the penalty is against the Eagles.
Personal foul, face mask, number 93, receiving team, after the ball was kicked. 15 yards from the dead ball spot, first down for Philadelphia.
Greg Townsend is number 93. Let's see if we can find it.
Just watch this kick again, Pat, and we'll just look at it on the clicker here. Let me see what happened. I mean, he just stopped it, and I don't think his foot got caught. Unless it chipped right there.
Yeah,
yeah.
It did.
Yeah, what happened is he brought the foot down, and it got caught before he hit the ball. A divot come out. That's like you hit a wedge.
Well, you're supposed to take a divot, but not here.
You hit a wedge, you hit behind the ball. I've never seen that in all my life.
I saw Sean Landeta miss one at Soldier Field one time. Calvin Williams makes the reception from Cunningham. Deion Sanders on the tackle.
You know, we know that Charlie Gardner had a real good first half, and if you look, he made 50 yards to the left, 25 yards to the middle, and 27 yards to the right. Of course, that 50 yards with 8 carries on the left, one of those was that touchdown run that was a play of the game.
Garner and Walker are the two backs. Garner dipped it inside, got outside for a couple, stopped by Lee Woodall.
The 49ers defense probably went in and talked a lot at halftime about Charlie Gardner, about who is this guy? You know, how big is he? How many years he been in the league? Yeah, and all those things. He's like 5'8" or 5'9", 180 pounds. Rookie out of Tennessee, second round draft choice.
Well, you know, being from Tennessee, all the guys that come out of Tennessee seem to be very fast.
Yeah, look at that. He only has a GAR. They don't even know what his name is. It was Garner. Now in the second half, it's just Gar.
There's Cunningham swinging it out to Walker. Walker's taken down by Lee Woodall.
Tennessee must have been pretty good. I mean, because you know, Heath Schuler, who's playing for the Redskins, started today, was a quarterback on Garner's team. So you had Heath Schuler running it or throwing it, Charlie Garner running it.
He's got a new nickname, Gar.
Remember, you know, he has a broken first rib, which is way up there by the shoulder. They have a special pad right where they're pointing now, and I think that's what they're checking.
Flag on the play. Cunningham went with a long, hard count.
Full start, number 74, offense. Prior to the snap.
Against Bernard Williams.
Penalty, third down.
Cunningham just kept going after the whistle blew. He was out there like practicing his moves. Talking about practice, you know, Randall Cunningham wears weights in his pants. On his thighs, he wears two pounds on each thigh, and like 4 extra pounds on his shoulder pad when he practices, just to practice with extra weight, and then when he plays, he'll feel lighter.
He has looked light today.
And quick.
Outside to Fred Barnett. Barnett out of bounds. Deion Sanders knocked him out of bounds. Garner, we're told, has a sore shoulder. The Eagles are going to have to punt it. Mitch Berger.
That was Fred Barnett's first catch, Pat.
Well, Fred Barnett came back from very, very serious knee injury last year. A lot of people didn't think he'd be able to play this year. But he says he's back and he's fine 100%.
And when he's 100%, he's one of the best wide receivers in the game.
Dexter Carter back deep for the 49ers. Mitch Berger to punt it. Carter. Good coverage by the Eagles. They knock him back to about the 35, where San Francisco will take over. 1,000 miles a year. Here's Steve Young back to throw it. Incomplete, out in the direction of Ricky Waters. Again, he was under pressure.
Yeah, and he was trying to get the ball deep to Jerry Rice, and Mark McMillan really had good coverage. I think that's one thing you have to give some credit to these defenders here. Here's Jerry Rice. You're going to see him try and go deep, and this is who they're trying to throw to. You see little Mark McMillan? He's right there with him. He had good coverage, the safety there. Steve Young was looking there, didn't have anything, had to bring the ball down.
Pressure by Andy Harmon. Young, incomplete, intended for Brent Jones. He saw a blitz coming, tried to unload in a hurry.
I think he saw William Fuller coming too. I mean, he was just getting so much pressure there that he had to get rid of the ball. He gets rid of it so quickly. Watch the pressure that he has from his right side. It's coming so quickly, it looked like an avalanche there on that side. He had to get rid of it before Brent Jones was even looking.
Leonard Renfro has replaced William Perry. And now Greg Townsend moves inside. Young intended for Rice. 3 Eagle defenders led by Eric Allen and Greg Jackson right there with him.
You're going to see Rice starting there in the slot. Eric Allen is up in tight coverage, staying a little underneath him because he knows that he has help over the top. You see, then Greg Jackson comes in over the top, so they really had him sandwiched in there. I mean, Rice is trying to get his arms out, but it looked like he just couldn't get him away. He just didn't stretch those arms out. Greg Jackson was in perfect position.
Wilmsmeyer back to punt it. The last one he almost missed. This one is not much better, but it's straight up. Jeff Seidner signaled fair catch and made it at the 36. First down, Philadelphia as they lead 8. Philadelphia leading San Francisco. Third quarter. 10:26 remains. And the Eagles have looked like by far the best team around. Garner is back, by the way, as the deep back. Back by himself. 2 tight ends. Cunningham going deep. Out of bounds. So the defenders, Fred Barnett was the intended receiver. And he was out of bounds. Cameraman is got to get back up.
And he got to get that. He has to get that hat straightened out. The hat was in the front, and it got he got his hat knocked sideways.
Maybe he doesn't want to get back up.
What you need a friend for. Hey, you know who made a good block on that one was Charlie Garner. I mean, he's only a 180-pound guy, and you wonder, you know he can run. You wonder if he can block. He picked up Dana Stubblefield on that last play.
And the handoff is to Garner. Hit behind the line of scrimmage by Ricky Jackson and Gary Plummer.
Poor old Gar, I think they figured him out. That's one thing that, they probably didn't talk about Garner at all before the game, but at halftime they had a little talk about Charlie Garner and what he's doing to him. Garner's looking over there and saying, in that first half was a heck of a lot easier than that second half.
They know my name now.
You know, half of it.
And most of it's gone.
Before this game's over, the rest of it's going to be gone if they keep running them in there like that.
That's Walker on the move. And Cunningham back to throw it. Pass is caught by Calvin Williams. Enough for a Philadelphia first down right at midfield.
Yeah, those are the things that the 49ers haven't been able to stop all day. Here's Calvin Williams. The other thing is Charlie Gardner we talked about and Calvin Williams. They got a man-to-man there. He just stops. Cunningham sees him. He works back, just throws it away and low from the defender. Either Calvin Williams catches it or no one gets it.
First down Eagles right at midfield. Garner is the lone setback. And here's Charlie Garner with some room and down to about the 43 where he's knocked out of bounds.
Last night when we were talking to Randall Cunningham, he said that the big thing they have to do today is use their personnel. And if you look, he's thrown for 200 yards. Garner has run for 102, and Calvin Williams has caught passes for 122 yards. So it's kind of been a Cunningham and Garner and Williams type of offense.
Second and 3. It's Garner again with room. And Charlie Garner gets an Eagle first down at about the 40. Stopped by Jim McDonald.
He got a good block by his right guard, Lester Holmes. You see here, Lester Holmes is a right guard, and he's going to pull and make the play right there, make the block. You see the motion start, and then you're going to watch that right guard. You see him pull. Garner gets in behind him. Now watch Holmes right there. Boom. He kicks out Ken Norton just as Garner gets there.
And Garner cut nicely off the block. First down, Eagles at the San Francisco 34. Herschel Walker was alone set back in. Cunningham whips it to Maurice Johnson to the 30.
You know, one thing here, the 49ers haven't gotten any pressure, and a lot of it is the pass protection of the Eagles. I mean, here they even fall down. I mean, Alexander, the center, starts back and he trips, and the 49ers just trip right over him. But one thing, they haven't allowed that penetration up the middle by those two tackles, Bryant Young and Dana Stubblefield.
2nd and 5. Walker again is the lone setback. Johnson again is in motion. As they go with two tight ends, Herschel Walker is faked to by Cunningham, and Cunningham swings down inside the 20 to about the 18. Lee Woodall made the initial contact.
I think he was trying to throw to Mark Bavaro, Pat, and then he just pointed to Bavaro. The guy's covering you, so just block the guy that's covering you, and I'll run with the ball.
First down, Philadelphia at the San Francisco 18.
That's one thing about Randall Cunningham. You never know where he's going to be when he throws the ball. I mean, he'll be behind the center a lot. He'll roll out right, left, scramble right and left. He is very, very tough to defend.
Walker behind Cunningham. The handoff is to Herschel. Herschel Walker out of bounds inside the 15 at about the 14. Woodall again involved in the tackle.
Rich Kotite, the head coach, calls the plays, gives them to Zeke Bretkowski, who's next to him. Then Zeke will call him in to Randall Cunningham. Right now, he's talking into that headset that goes right into Randall Cunningham's helmet. You remember Zeke, no?
Sure.
When he was a quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
And the Bears. Vaughn Hebron was in the backfield. That was he. The pass was intended for George Seifert. Looks at the 49er team that has been dominated by Philadelphia today. Certainly hasn't been an enjoyable look for George.
No, he's wondering what hit him, because this Eagle team came and they've beaten the 49ers to the punch. I mean, they've beaten them the punch all day in every area. I mean, they've beaten them on offense, they've beaten them on defense, and that's one thing that the 49ers have done well for so many years, is they beat you to the punch. That first step, boom, they'd always win that first step. They haven't won it today.
The Eagles took the opening drive and put some points on the board, and they've been there ever since. Cunningham's pass in the direction of Fred Barnett is not there. And here comes Eddie Murray and the rest of the Eagle field goal unit. Now they have in their repertoire some trick plays.
I think with the score 30-8, though, I think they just kick it, don't you?
I think so too. Brister is the holder. I think they just add on the 3 if they can from 30 yards by Murray. And for him, this is as close to automatic as it gets. They're going to run the option. Flags on the play. Brister gets it in the end zone. They were going to run the option.
That was a trick play.
Yep.
Play of game on the offense.
It just took them too long. And they had to show the play.
4th down.
Now they have to kick it. That was Rich Kotite's trick. He had that option play. You see, he just gave the signal there. He gave the signal to kick it. But that was going to be an option where Bubby Brister, the holder, was going to come down the line and option, and Eddie Murray was going to be the option guy. And you just want to get up to, the guts. I got to call it. You finally call it. It's going to work. It would have been a touchdown, but it just took too much time.
Too much time, and they had to give it away.
And now they just have to go to the signal, the old kick signal.
Now kick it from 36 yards is Murray. And it's good from Eddie Murray. And the Eagles add to their lead, 33-8.
I love
steak.
Especially a thick, juicy T-bone.
A1 all over the top.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
I'm in the mood for something spicy. Tongue-tingling spicy. Spice is just...
They get you here, and they get you right here.
I want something with gumption.
Something with a peppery kick that's spicy. A1 Bold. Yeah, that's what I'm in the mood for.
Original A1 and A1 Bold. Their house steak is done.
The polite way to call collect with politeness, man.
Hello. Rule 1. Do not eat before making a collect call. 2. Do not make phone twirlies. And most importantly, never ever call Summon Collect by dialing 0.
Yow!
It's rude because it costs the people you call a lot of money.
That hanky hurts.
The truly considerate way to call Collect? Dial 1-800-COLLECT. It saves the people you call up to 44%.
Thank you.
And always use your pinky.
They really paid attention to the details.
I just love the feeling of getting in and going.
This year, 3 times as many people as last year have bought a Mitsubishi Galant. Now there's one more excellent reason. Our 24-month lease on the 1995 Galant. Just $199 a month with only $1,000 down.
It was a lot of things. The quality, the security.
And for a limited time, the 24-month Galant lease from Mitsubishi. The new thinking in automobiles.
Fox NFL Sunday is brought to you by Dr. Pepper and your local Dr. Pepper bottler. Dr. Pepper is just what the doctor ordered.
Back at Candlestick Park, the Eagles set to kick it off after the field goal by Eddie Murray. And they lead San Francisco 33-8. Murray will kick off. Dexter Carter. Murray's kickoffs have been short. His field goals have been accurate, but we won't know what was going to happen. The ball blew off the tee. Remember, they can only use a 1-inch tee now this year. That's one of the new rules.
Yeah, and they have 2 kinds of 1-inch tees. That is one that we just looked at right there, that right here, and then they have the other one that that has the prawns on it, and this is the one that they use.
Murray's line drive kick bounces down to Derek LaVille. And the Eagles down in good shape, down him at about the 29-yard line. So the 49ers offensive unit will take over from there, and they've had their problems all day long.
Game is presented by the authority of the National Football League and is intended for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or any use of the telecast without the expressed written consent of the San Francisco 49ers and the National Football League is prohibited and not allowed. Now back to you, Summerall.
Were you sick long? Thank you. I never got that long to do the disclaimer.
That kind of sounded like that last punt looked.
Yeah. That's Logan, who makes the reception and does some pirouettes. Is that what you call those?
I'll tell you one thing, every time Steve Young goes back to pass, they're trying to knock him down. Watch Andy Harmon, 91. Just as Steve Young throws the ball, they're just throwing him to the ground. And I'll tell you, at some point, it's going to show. And I think it's starting to show now in Steve Young. Well, I think he's just been hit way too much this season. I mean, he had a tough game against the Kansas City Chiefs. He had a tough game against the Rams last week against the Saints, and it looks like he's just getting back there. And every time he tries to do something, he can't get set and do it. And I think either soreness or frustration is starting to set in.
Brings up a 3rd down. John Taylor wide left. They need 5 for the first down. Young back to throw it. Wheels it outside to Rice. And Jerry Rice will get a 49er first down at about midfield. Mark McMillan made the stop.
That Mark McMillan is really something. I mean, he's only 5'7", weighs about 160 pounds, and he's been all over the field. I mean, he's had to cover Jerry Rice, John Taylor, and this guy just goes. I mean, he wasn't drafted. He's walked on to college, walked on everywhere he goes. But he's just one of those guys that you always say he's too small, but he's not.
Steve Young, incomplete. And over the top of the pile of Mark Logan is Mark McMillan.
He was trying to show him, don't come in my area, but what the heck? He's not. I mean, at 5'7", 160 pounds, who are you going to scare?
Like you said, he's been short all of his life.
No, he has, and he's learned to play that way.
Yep.
And he's one of the bright-eyed, scrappy guys that are fun in this league.
Young is hit again just as he let go. Just as the ball was released, William Fuller hit Steve Young from the blind side, not illegally. And
he's getting hit way too much. I mean, and as I said, I think they're starting to add up, and if they haven't yet, they're going to. Well, they're really having trouble. I mean, they really need Harris Barton back, because watch Fuller. He's been doing that all day. I mean, he's been going inside and outside of Harry Boat's lane all day.
And Steve Young is coming out. Elvis Gerback came into the huddle. A 49er timeout. Steve Young is going to away from the coaching staff. He doesn't look like he knows where he is.
Dr. Pepper presents
What a play!
Just what the doctor ordered.
San Francisco 8. Elvis Gerback has taken Steve Young's place at quarterback. And I'm not sure what brought that about. He was hit a lot.
Well, you watch him. Here's Young. He's ready to call a play. The Elvis Gerback just comes running in. You see Gerback coming in here. And now Steve Young looks and he says, what the heck's this? And he comes out. And then Elvis Gerback takes a timeout. And just because it was third down coming up, they must have thought something was wrong with Steve Young.
And here's Gerback back to throw it. Gets it to Jerry Rice. Rice lunges for the first down. I think Steve Young was much upset about being brought out of the game.
I know the doctor was back there talking to him. Someone must have thought there was something wrong with Steve Young. I mean, they had to think there was, because, I mean, to take him out on second down is a strange time to take a guy out if you don't think he's injured. I mean, to take Steve Young out is strange anyway. He has been, we're just making a point now, he's been getting beaten around. But if he's okay, you would leave him in there. And if you were going to make a change, it's usually a change of possession.
4th and 2, and they're going for it. Here's Elvis Gerback. Just does get rid of it. They don't make it. Ricky Waters dropped it. And the Eagles will take over.
That was Bert Grossman and William Thomas back there just again as Gerback was going to throw the ball. Elvis Gerback's having the same problem that Steve Young has had, and it's really not Steve Young's problem or Elvis Gerback's. It's getting those guys blocked, and the 49ers just haven't done a job of blocking today.
Our information, John, from the sideline is that there is nothing physically wrong with Steve Young. The doctor, the medical staff apparently don't think that's true.
Yeah, but I mean, he's too mad. I mean, I believe that he really thinks there's nothing wrong with him because he's too mad. Remember, a year ago he had a history of concussion, and maybe they think that he's had a concussion, but he's arguing too vehemently.
Here's Randall Cunningham back to throw it. Fires incomplete. Intended for Mark Bavaro.
You know, now on the other side, you take Randall Cunningham. He has a clean uniform. I mean, he got knocked down right at the end of the half once or twice, but he's been pretty clean. And that's a big thing, that he's had good protection. And of course, the other thing he had is a good running game. Now, the 49ers side, they haven't had good protection, and they haven't had a good running game.
Steve Young is angry.
I haven't heard Ricky Waters' name in about an hour and a half.
Nope. That's Vaughn Hebron weaving his way for about 5 yards. Dana Stubblefield tripped him up.
There's Otho Davis. He's taping up old Andy Harmon there. Andy Harmon had a big day, got a pressure. In fact, I think he was the last guy that hit Steve Young.
He also got an interception.
He had that interception. He's so proud of that jump. He waited and waited, and then he jumped about 2 inches to get that ball.
Got to jump up and meet it. Cunningham on third down. 49ers were showing blitz. They might have shown it a little early. There's Dana Hall, the safety man who blitzed, but I think San Francisco is offside. Steve Young is still mad.
James Joseph was there to block Dana Hall, and I don't know if the whistle blew or not. If the whistle did, then Dana Hall
offside,
had to stop.
Number 94, defense. 5-yard penalty, third down.
Stubblefield jump. So they'll rerun third down.
Now, Stubblefield was the inside guy. He jumped. Dana Hall came up, and he came from the outside.
Elvis Gerback didn't really have time to loosen up much. 3rd and 1. Joseph and Walker behind Cunningham. James Joseph, the ball carrier. First down for the Eagles at the 49er 44.
You know, watch Steve Young here. He's saying to Brent Jones, he said, "Do you believe that?"
Steve Young now up again, walking around, still upset.
I think someone's trying to tell him that there's something wrong with him. And he is arguing that there is nothing wrong with him. It's his game. He started the game, and he wants to finish it. I've never seen Steve Young this emotional.
I haven't either. Here's Herschel Walker. Walker taken down after a gain of about 6. Right now, let's return to James Brown in our Hollywood studio.
All right, Pat. Well, the Saints have had the worst rushing attack in the NFL, but they look good on this one as Derek Brown takes it in for the score. Saints right now beating up on the Giants 27-13. That one in the 4th. Back to San Francisco, Pat and John.
Speaking of beating up on someone, the Eagles are beating up on the 49ers. And a very angry Steve Young on the sideline.
And it's an anger that's not going away.
No. 2nd down and 4. That's Joseph tripped up, no gain. Tripped up by Stubblefield.
Yeah, I've never seen him like this. I mean, and it's one of those things that's going to be interesting to hear about later. That, you know, everyone is trying to calm him down, and he's just not buying it. And coaches are talking to him, doctors are talking to him, other players. Deion Sanders came up and talked to him, and talking to Brent Jones, and he's just not having any of it.
Gary Kubiak. 3rd down, Cunningham back to throw again. Pass is caught by Herschel Walker. That'll be a 1st down. And that's also the end of the 3rd quarter. With the score, the Philadelphia Eagles 33, San Francisco 8. Fox NFL Sunday will continue after these messages from your local Fox station.
Oh, no!
Oh, yes!
Fox.
I was shocked to learn that most ordinary credit cards charge interest from the moment you buy something, if you carry a balance as little as $1. Thankfully, American Express has introduced a new credit card called the Optima True Grace Card. You get an interest-free grace period on each new purchase, even when you carry a balance. It's a good thing. But don't just throw away your old credit cards. Recycle them. I'm retiling my pool. Apply today and cut your interest charges.
Now what kind of a game are you playing?
The big game, Mitsubishi's fall kickoff sales event.
Yeah, who wins?
The customer. See, it's all here in the playbook. We've got factory leases on 95 Galad S, only $199 a month. Plus on other models, factory cash rebates, factory-to-dealer incentives, or financing as low as 0% APR.
Go on, sell one for the Gipper.
Thanks. Okay, team, let's go. The Mitsubishi Fall Kickoff Sales Event. Hurry, this event ends soon.
Today, we're comparing two salsas, La Victoria Thick and Chunky and the leading salsa. First, La Victoria. They always start with fresh, vine-ripened tomatoes, crisp onions, and fresh jalapenos. Now for the leading salsa. Unlike La Victoria, they don't always use fresh tomatoes.
La Victoria, when you're ready for real salsa.
Sightings, tonight at 6 on Fox 11.
Ready to begin the fourth quarter at Candlestick Park with the Eagles leading the 49ers 33-8. 25 points is the largest deficit under George Seifert that the 49ers have had to make up. And if the Eagles continue to move, it'll be larger. That's Vaughn Hebron. Hebron gets to about the 25 before he is herded backwards by Charles Mann and a few more of the 49er defenders, and Steve Young is still mad.
You know, usually you get mad and it goes away, but this is one of those things with Steve Young that isn't going away, and I'll bet you it doesn't go away after the game, and I'll bet you it doesn't go away tonight, and I'll bet you it's not gone away tomorrow.
The anger. Steve Young doesn't get angry that often.
Yeah, this is an anger that's driven by a lot of pride.
Second down. Here's Cunningham giving to Hebron. And Hebron gets down to about the 15. That should be enough for an Eagle first down, stopped by Ken Norton.
And they've really done a job on Ken Norton and Plummer and those ends. I mean, they've done a job on pass protection and on running and everything. Now it's Hebron, a little delay. You see him cut back, look for the hole. And I'll tell you, they're just running through and just getting big holes in there. But that's happened, you know, for 3 quarters they developed that.
Well, the Eagles wanted to run. They got 161 yards today. Their average has been about 90. So they've gotten that. That's just bump on Hebron again, cutting back inside the 15 to about the 14 maybe.
And the good news for Rich Kotite and his team was Charlie Gardner, and I think that may also be the bad news because I think he injured that same area that he had injured before. They said it's in the same area. He's not going to play anymore.
In the upper back.
Yeah, and it's his first rib. He had a broken first rib. And this was the first game that he played. They knew that he was going to be an exciting runner.
They were right.
And now we all know it.
Second down, about 9. Cunningham, shovel pass to Hebron. He's down at about the 8-yard line. Almost broke it for a touchdown.
Greg Jackson has cramps here. We saw earlier Mark McMillan. They were working on his cramps. Hey, the Eagles are pulling out all the plays. I mean, they have option plays. Randall Cunningham ran an option. Bobby Brister ran an option. That time they had the old shuffle pass there. I mean, they had 2 weeks to get ready for this game, and I'll say they used those 2 weeks well.
They got a lot of stuff ready, didn't they? 3rd and 3.
They pulled a lot of stuff out of that old hopper.
This is Vaughn Hebron. This is Walker. I beg your pardon. Walker. Touchdown, but there's a flag on the play in front of him.
This is a result of really beating down a defense. I mean, that touchdown isn't going to count, but now, after you beat them down for 3 quarters, then it gets to a point that it's easier and easier.
Holding, number 31, offense. 10-yard penalty.
Holding called against Brian O'Neill.
And then it gets to a point where it's really too easy. I mean, that last play, in all due respect to Herschel Walker, was too easy.
Just sort of strolled in.
Yeah, this is a beaten down 49er defense.
The lead blocker was O'Neill, and it was number 31 who was called for the holding.
He brought a hunk of the field off with him, didn't he? What the heck is that right in there?
A hunk of the field.
I think so. Watch him. He's going to be the lead blocker there. He gets a heck of a block. That was James Joseph, though.
Was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was O'Neill. Well, whoever. Cunningham Back to throw it. Fires down the middle. Bavaro, touchdown. The Eagles add to the total.
I think that's the way all the 49ers feel, like Steve Wallace. They're just shaking their head. They can't believe this. Everything the Eagles have tried has worked. I mean, they've passed, they've thrown to Calvin Williams, they've done options. They've beat him to the punch.
Just the touchdown there. They've done everything, as you say.
Everything. This is a very well-coached, very well-prepared Eagle team.
Hey.
Eddie Murray's extra point adds to the total. 40-8, Philadelphia over San Francisco. 12:04 left to play. Off. And Dexter Carter will return to about the 23. Steve Young has finally calmed down a bit, outwardly at least.
Yeah, we talk about this Eagle defense or the lack of 49er offense. The 49ers have only had 1 first down this half. George Seifert hair is standing about straight up when you only get 1 first down. That'll do that to your hair.
Wow.
Jerry Rice is just growing back in, and as you say, Steve Young has finally calmed down. But that's not going to go away.
No, it's not. Derek Lavelle, the ball carrier. Steve Young was knocked down 9 times.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's probably why they took him out. And here's just a couple of them. You see, he didn't have any time. He holds the ball, and Fuller was a big part of that. I mean, here's just a couple of them. It just seemed like every time he'd go back, there was always someone there, just hitting him and throwing him to the ground. I think it was just, just those things just added up on him.
2nd and 6, Gerback back to throw it. Pass is deflected, incomplete. And those weren't just easy knockdowns either that Steve Young took.
The interesting thing is the job that this Eagle defense and cover guys have had. You see that Steve Young, and maybe the thing that calmed them down is the 49ers were on offense, but they took Jerry Rice out too. And then Jerry Rice goes and sits down next to him,
and Logan's sitting down. Brent Jones is out.
Ricky Waters is out.
They're back to Nate Singleton. And that'll be enough for a San Francisco first down.
That's what a defensive tackle does, Pat. You go in there and you don't know what it is, but you just kind of check your fingers, make sure they're all there, and then just hand your hand to a guy to look at.
Andy Harmon with the ice pack.
I remember we saw him once earlier. They were taping that thing up, and obviously the tape job didn't work, so they put ice on it, and they're taking him in now and probably x-ray.
He's sort of the life of the Eagle defense, although all of them had a lot of life today. This is Derek Lavelle. Behind, out of bounds. Word on Andy Harmon is that he has a broken right thumb.
And like you say, he was a big part of that. I think when Rich Kotite talks about his defensive line, he said Andy Harmon is really going to be a heck of a player, and William Fuller, who they got from Houston, is a heck of a player right now. And I think those two guys today really helped on this Eagle defensive dominance.
Side by side, they really put the pressure on. The Eagles leading 40-8. Elvis Gerback back to throw it. And now he goes down. Hit by Bert Grossman.
Yeah, it was funny when the Eagles lost all those guys, Reggie White 2 years ago, Clyde Simmons, Seth Joyner last year. But that'll kind of be the end of this Eagle defense, but they pick up a guy like Fuller and a guy like Townsend and a guy like Grossman here. You see him making a play as a pass rusher, and maybe their defense is better now than it was a year ago.
Brings up third down. About 5 yards for a first. McCaffrey in motion. Here is Elvis Grbac. Finally does get rid of it. Good throw. Incomplete, however. Intended for Derek LaVille.
I think this whole thing is just a combination of one, good coverage by the Eagles and a good pass rush. You know, and it's those two things working together that they don't have someone open when they're ready to throw the ball. And then by the time they get ready, the rush is there.
Jeff Seidner back deep. Klaus Wilmsmeyer to punt it for San Francisco. It's a better kick. At about the 7. Seidner almost came out of the pack. Does get it back to about the 24. Troy Wilson on the stop. It's 40 Philadelphia, 8 San Francisco. You're wondering, that is correct. Pat Summerall, John Madden at Candlestick Park. It's 40-8. The Eagles lead the 49ers. And the crowd at Candlestick has begun to depart. 9:23 left to play. But the 49ers have probably just decided, hey, we got to take our licks. We've already taken our licks.
Yeah,
Rest some guys.
So they've just gotten guys out like Rice and Taylor and Waters and Brent Jones and Steve Young.
Vaughn Hebron, the ball carrier, gets to about the 27. Gain 2 or 3.
But you know the thing that, I mean, the offense, you know that their line has been hurt, but you wonder about this defense. I think that's the thing that has to worry. I mean, the Eagles kind of getting 40 points have had their way today. And, you know, in the offseason, the 49ers went out and they got, you know, Plummer and they got Norton and they got all these guys, Deion Sanders and so on. And then to have 40 points scored against you, something's wrong there. Something's not working yet.
Here's Vaughn Hebron. Out to about the 28-29. Here's what's ahead for the 49ers.
Well, you know, they just want to get well, so they have to go and play at Detroit next week, then at Atlanta, then they get Tampa Bay, and I think they're just trying to get here. You know, if they can get to that bye week, get through those 3 games with wins, then get to your bye week, and then start to get some of those guys back. Get a Harris Barton back. You know, get Richard Dent back. You know, start getting some players, especially your offensive line. You're going to have Jesse Sapolo back and try and get some guys healthy.
3rd and 5. Bavaro's the man on the move, and here's Cunningham with the shuttle pass again to Vaughn Hebron, and he got enough for a first down.
But I'll tell you one thing about this. This is going to be tough for confidence. I mean, I think the 49ers had maybe even a little more confidence than they had talent. And now they're not going to have that confidence after this game. And that's going to be the thing that George Seifert has to do. I mean, he has to get that team back, you know, get Steve Young back, get the confidence back, and probably still hope that he can get some running and some protection to do it.
And the key thing is you may have a lot of talent, but you got to have healthy talent.
Yeah, and the thing is you have to, you know, that old cliche, take them one game at a time. I mean, don't be looking at championships and Super Bowls and those kind of things. We got to play today.
On first down, it's Vaughn Hebron again. And he wheels out to about the 46. The Eagles, in the meantime, have looked totally dominating on offense today and on defense, too.
You know, Charlie Garner had to be a pleasant addition to this team. Calvin Williams, a well-kept secret. But look at this offensive line, Pat, the job that they did. They didn't allow a sack today, 5.2 yards average per rush. But they really dominated from the get-go.
And they've had their bye week.
And they look like they're fresh.
They surely do. Hebron again to the 45. Close to a first down, not quite.
You know, if you look at their schedule, they get to play Washington next, who Dallas really got. And then 2 weeks from now, they play the Cowboys. That's going to be an interesting game.
Won't it, though?
and then Houston, and then Washington again, and then Arizona, then Cleveland. I mean, the Eagles, remember a year ago, Pat, they were 4-0, and there were people that thought that maybe the Eagles were the best team in football, and in that fourth game, they lost Cunningham, Barnett, and Seidner.
Right. They came back to finish strong, however. This is Von Hebron again into 49er territory. Another Eagle first down. Today's game was produced by Bob Stinner and directed by Sandy Grossman. Studio show was produced by Scott Ackerson, directed by Bob Levy. The executive producers of Fox Sports are Ed Gorin and David Hill. Philadelphia offense today produced by Randall Cunningham and Zeke Bratkowski and all those on the offensive line who've done such a really good job.
Now there's a rookie, Pat, Charlie Gardner. He knows he's not going to play. He has a baseball cap on, but every time the Eagles run a play, he still puts his mouthpiece in.
Here's Von Hebron to about the 49er 47-yard line. Stopped by Charles Mann.
See, and then he takes it out, and then he puts it back in. There are some things that don't go together. That's a baseball cap and a mouthpiece. If you got your baseball cap on, you don't need your mouthpiece. And if you got your mouthpiece in to be used, you better have a helmet on.
Leaning on an appliance?
If you want something to lean on, you couldn't pick a better lean. I mean, of all the leans in the world, that may be one of the all-time great leans.
2nd and 8. Herschel Walker over the left side to about the 43. Day for the 49ers. The most points allowed with George Seifert as their head coach would be the largest margin of defeat under Seifert, and their worst defeat since 1980. Not a good day.
And it was one of those things that no one expected. I mean, I expected a good game because there were so many good players in this game, and a close game, and maybe even a high-scoring game, but not a 40-8 blowout by the Eagles.
That's Walker again, and he lunges close to a first down. Looks like it might be about a half foot short.
See, an offensive line play, and all line play, you kind of go through where everything is even, and then you start to get a little advantage, and then one team gets a bigger advantage and a bigger advantage, and then a real big advantage, and that's the point that the Eagles got to in this second half.
4th down, it's going to bring it up. Now here's another of the heralded members of the 49ers who sprained his ankle in practice this week. Maybe that was an omen.
And then I think they kept him on Fred Barnett a lot, and Fred Barnett didn't catch many passes, but Calvin Williams went wild. And then maybe because he was in there, maybe that opened up a little running, because Charlie Gardner sure did that.
The Eagles need about that much for a first down. They sent in their punting team, Mitch Berger, to give the 49ers more yards to cover to get anything on the board. 3:21 left to play. The stands have emptied for the most part. Jesse Sapolo over on the sideline said yesterday he was feeling better but not good enough to play.
I think in a week or two he'll be back, and 4 or 5 weeks Harris Barton will be back, because this 49er team does need that offensive line.
Well, it's such an intricate blocking scheme that it takes some time together to get what they want accomplished.
The Eagles are going to take another penalty here. Does two things. One, it puts them back in a better punting position, and 2, it takes time off the clock, and 3, it allows Rich Kotite to take his hat off and start a celebration.
Hugging.
Why do you have to? Maybe that's
why. Offense.
Why do you have to take your hat off to hug?
On their heels. Berger's kick is a high hanging one into the end zone. They'll bring it back to the 20. 40-8. The Eagles lead the 49ers.
A lot of celebration down there, and they deserve it.
They'll fly back to Philadelphia tonight, get there about 2:30 in the morning. That's William Floyd, the ball carrier. Floyd pushed out of bounds. Michael Zordich pulled him out of bounds. Well, we showed you about George Seifert and the 49ers. Today, the second most points the Eagles have scored under Rich Kotite. The largest margin of victory under Rich.
What do you do with George Seifert? What are you going to fire for? All these guys do is win. With good coaching.
Floyd the other way. Knocked out of bounds at about the 20. Right now, let's return to James Brown in our Hollywood studio.
All right, Pat, there's finally been an Atlanta score in this ball game with the Rams. Bobby Hebert in for the injured. Jeff George finds Ricky Sanders with the strike. Terrence Mathis had the two-point conversion, and Atlanta leads by the score, Pat, get this, 8-5. That in the fourth. Back to San Francisco, Pat and John.
I don't know if I've ever heard a score like that. Football, 8-5.
You know, today would have been the final day of the baseball season. In fact, the Giants who play here wouldn't have been playing here, but they would have ended up with the Dodgers. Months and months ago, before a strike, everyone was looking forward to that last series of the season. There's a sign. They went on strike, and all the guys went to their houses and left the signs there.
I would have given you 8-5 that this wouldn't have happened, the Eagles and the 49ers.
This has been a very impressive effort by these Philadelphia Eagles.
Life blimp Snoopy 2 is piloted by Captains Lee Bradbury and Matt Elkins. The blimp and its crew will travel to more than 35 sporting events and television specials this year. Perfect day in San Francisco.
Yeah, but they never get
for
to
the 49ers.
But they never get to sit in the 50, those guys. I mean, they go to all those events and never get courtside seats, sit in the 50. They never get to eat the hot dogs, any of that good stuff.
Here's Elvis Gerback. Pass is caught by Nate Singleton. 49ers playing hurry up, but they can't hurry enough. 40-8, the Eagles lead.
They'll have to regroup. You know, it's going to hurt tonight, and it'll hurt tomorrow, and about Wednesday or Thursday they'll get it back going again.
Go back behind the intended receiver, Nate Singleton. I think you get in a situation like this as a player, not bad. I was going to say it's how soon you forget, but I can't say that now.
Yeah, that's the thing. By Wednesday or Thursday, they forget that, and they're all ready to go again. But, you know, one guy, we're showing a lot of sad guys there, those 49ers, but one guy in Eagle have to be happy as heck, and that's Bill Romanowski, who, you know, the 49ers kind of let him go, and he felt that maybe they blamed the linebackers and the defense too much for what happened in the championship game.
Gerback's pass is caught by Ted Thompson.
And then to come back, you know, have someone who lets you go and then come back and beat them like this, 40-8. I don't care. I mean, you try and, you know, play it down. Oh, it's no big thing. But like Greg Townsend said, he's never seen a player so wired up as Romanowski was this week. And if you get that wired up to play, I'll guarantee you, when you win like this, you have to be one happy guy.
Here's Gerback back to throw it again. It's knocked out of his hands. Greg Townsend, just as he went by, knocked it out of his hands. And it's going to be ruled fumble. And the Eagles are going to take over.
That was one of the ugliest run backs I've ever seen by a lineman. Greg Townsend didn't want to be tackled. He was looking, and there was no one in front of him. He was looking behind him to find someone to straight arm. Don't get me.
33 seconds left, 40-8.